7 p.m. on Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. We're going to begin this meeting of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules. I'd ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask everyone to remain standing. We have a moment of silence for all those who serve in our military, both here and abroad. Thank you very much. Clerk Semino, could we have a roll call to begin the meeting?
Certainly. Councillor Ringus?
Here.
Councillor Hume? Here. Councillor Flaherty?
Here.
Councillor Moran?
Here.
Councillor Quilty? Here. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. Before we get going into the agenda tonight, this is the first meeting of a town council body since the weekend, and I just wanted to take a second and thank Acting Chief Viola and our firefighters. This past weekend, we've had a very dry season. There was a number of little blazes that popped up in dry areas, but specifically in the area of Skyline Drive and behind John Paul Circle. It was a significant blaze. It's very difficult terrain and difficult to get water in over there, and our firefighters did a great job protecting both property and residents. So thank you for the excellent work that was shown there. Also thank you to surrounding communities. Mutual aid was called in. They helped in battling the fire itself and in covering our firehouses. I don't have an exhaustive list, but I know in being around town, I saw trucks from Abington, from Boston, from Quincy around. So thank you to those folks for stepping up and helping the town when we needed it. And that would segue us nicely into just reminding those watching at home, we don't have the biggest crowd as I thought tonight, that we do have a fire ban, outdoor fire ban in effect in the town right now, and that is been issued by Mayor Joyce, the State Fire Marshal, in conjunction with Acting Chief Viola. There is no burning of leaves or outdoor cooking or any open flames outside through November 15th. Anything that would produce an ember that might cause something to ignite. So please keep that in mind over the next couple of days. But again, thank you to Chief Viola and the firefighters. Moving on to approval of minutes. There are no minutes to approve this evening. There's also no old business this evening. So jumping right into new business, 24034 Braintree Property Associates Limited Partnership, SSP 131 Lakeside LLC, SSP 135 Lakeside LLC, Section 135 612 Zoning Map and Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment, which is the creation of a PUD district known as a mixed-use plan development district or taking up any action relative thereto. Just for the folks at home, this is working through the process of getting to this point. This is the possible rezone of a parcel at the South Shore Plaza. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention paid to this issue, hence why we do have BCAM televising us tonight, and we will have a secondary hearing tomorrow night. This item has worked its way through the planning board where it got a favorable recommendation. It now rests with the town council before being taken up by the full town council, which is tentatively scheduled as a public hearing next Tuesday, November 19th. It does have to come through the Committee of Ordinance and Rules. I just note to everyone that this committee will make some sort of a recommendation, whether that be favorable or unfavorable, but that again is just a recommendation. The full council will take this up and the full council will actually be voting on it. And so with all of that said, we do have a few folks here to present tonight. That includes the ZOM with Jim Dunlop, represented by Attorney Frank Marinelli, who's already at the podium. We're going to be hearing from our planning board, planning director, Melissa Santucci Rossi, and I do thank Simon Properties. I know Tim Fox, the development director of Simon Properties, and perhaps others are here tonight, and they will be answering some questions that councilors may have. And so with all that said, Attorney Marinelli, I would turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair Ringus and members of the Ordinance and Rules Subcommittee. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. Chairperson Ringus, can I approach and distribute we have some booklets of community support for the outreach meetings that we've had since late June. And also this contains, I think, over 30 letters of support, emails and communication.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So just for the record, Frank Marinelli. My office is located at 439 Washington Street, Braintree. I'm a lifelong resident of Braintree and land use attorney with my business located in Braintree for over 38 years. I'm pleased to represent Zom Living, a premier residential developer who has built over 30,000 high-quality apartment homes nationwide, approximately $5 billion in development. As the chair introduced with me is Jim Dunlop. Jim is the managing director. Also Susan Ellsbury and Lawrence Scribby of Benchmark Strategies. The chair introduced Tim Fox. Tim is the director of development for Simon, and also Clay Hallman, who is the director of research for Simon Properties. Simon, as you know, is the owner of South Shore Plaza, Braintree's largest taxpayer, a critical town asset, and a transformation area per the master plan, page 20. Zom is proposing to build 325 needed residences on an unused back parking lot at South Shore Plaza, a $140 million transformation at an ideal mixed-use location. As we see with nearby Hanover Crossing, Legacy Place, University Avenue, and others nationwide, quality housing brings consumers and employees and is a catalyst for further economic development. Over the past 5 years, other communities created housing and economic development using planned unit development, PUD, and overlay zoning, well-known zoning processes authorized by Chapter 40A in our zoning ordinances. And despite our superior location, Braintree did not use zoning tools to create economic development over the past 5 years, and the numbers showed no new growth, no new revenue, culminating in an $18 million deficit, reputational harm, that our town was not open to quality development, layoffs, and the need for an $8 million override. The June override paid by us taxpayers addresses less than one-half of the deficit. So tonight, now with a new administration, a new era, new policy, Braintree has a new opportunity to move forward, as the vast majority of Braintree residents want, including at the South Shore Plaza, to restore our town's financial health with needed housing and economic development on 7 unutilized acres here at the South Shore Plaza, the town's commercial center. We need to work together to move forward with this detailed mixed-use overlay opportunity that is unanimously recommended to you by the Braintree Planning Board. The Council's adoption of the overlay ordinance text is certainly not the last step. Special permit public hearings will follow for any proposed development in the PUD. And South Shore Plaza is Braintree's largest taxpayer and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th largest taxpayers, as reported by the Patriot Ledger on June 24th. Our apartment complex is developed within the past approximate 20 years. So when you bring these two land uses together, retail and compact residential, you create a $140 million economic engine and a live, work, play lifestyle environment that is being sought and built nationwide. The 10.3-acre venue at South Shore Plaza is proximate to highway. It's adjacent to the former dam, which is a wonderful water amenity. The venue is also adjacent to a 1.6 million square foot shopping center with dining and retail, close to other commercial, and close to Blue Hill Reservation. So it's a uniquely desirable location to live, work, and recreate. Jim Dunlop, Managing Director of Zom, has worked in good faith and been a welcome presence in our community for about 2.5 years now. And Jim and our Zom team enthusiastically embrace community outreach and engagement. And you can see that outreach of community support in the community support booklet that we've distributed. We developed a comprehensive website to keep Braintree residents well-informed and featuring an extensive FAQ section. Hopefully some of you have seen it. Our website attracted over 3,300 unique visitors. And since late June, we organized and held 9 well-publicized meet and greet community meetings, including 2 at the proposed development site, 2 at Farmers Market, 2 at the American Legion, 1 at Watson Park, East Braintree, another at Highlands Playground, to ensure maximum resident participation. We had over 120 people attend our open houses. We did outreach to publicize the community meetings. To further spread the word, we flyered neighborhoods, posted meeting details on Braintree's Facebook pages, and sent direct mail invitations through the Braintree Advertiser to 16,300 households. That is impressive and substantial outreach by ZOM. And over the past year, we informed, engaged, and accurately answered all resident questions, everything you could want to learn about the proposed $140 million development. The process remains easily accessible to you even today at theresidencesatsouthshore.com. South Shore, the Residence at South Shore has more letters, emails, and communications of support than any other zoning proposal. And it's high time we respectfully submit for Braintree to move forward with quality housing and economic development. The residences at South Shore have a spectacular setting just north of the former dam, with balconies looking out toward the water amenity. The residences will have over 30% open space. I don't know if any of this is being displayed. Okay. 30% open space, beautifully designed apartments in a single building with balconies and water views of the former dam, interior and exterior, resort-style amenities, internal wrap parking design, and fitness center, walking trail, pool, abundant landscaping, and great synergy with the existing shopping center. There will not be any resident vehicle access to or from Laurie's Way, to or from the residences at South Shore. The Laurie's Way boundary, which has been sealed off to and from the South Shore Plaza for decades, will remain sealed off, and the separation will be substantially augmented. A thick, dense, high 13-foot berm with green giant arborvitae on top will be installed. And that is shown on our filed plans, and it's also documented at page 7 of our application that was filed with the council on June 21, 2024. The ZOM residences are on South Shore Plaza property, almost 2 football fields away from the closest single-family home located east of Flaherty School. The residences are not in a neighborhood. They are separated from it by distance, by a high berm, by thick vegetative buffer. The residences are on South Shore Plaza property. The building is 4 stories, which is an allowed height in highway business zone. The roof height is approximately 9.5 feet lower than the existing roof height of Nordstrom and Target. At page 9 of the favorable planning board recommendation, it was noted that the multifamily residential transforms the property, eliminates heat islands, and introduces thoughtful modern buildings. Quote, the concept demonstrates that substantial grading and landscape buffers have been thoughtfully placed, improved upon, planned, positioned, designed, and integrated as part of the MUPUD to soften and adequately protect the transition from smaller scale educational and single family to the east. Compare that extraordinary transformation to the existing conditions. As described in the Planning Board favorable recommendation at page 2, the area is best described as the underutilized parking lot, and then of course is the empty 99 restaurant building. And at page 9 of the favorable Planning Board recommendation, it is stated, quote, the character of this area is significantly lacking with very little appeal of any type. The parking area is surplus and very rarely used. The dwellings are secluded and not in an appealing sense, and this area has become attractive to homeless people setting up camps, end quote. Compare that again to a vibrant, beautifully landscaped, high-quality residential community which will attract to the former 99 restaurant building another restaurant or some other use having synergy with the residences which are right next to that building, and the residential lobby is oriented right towards that building. So that we are confident will have a synergistic use with the residences. I represented Hanover Crossing, and after the 300 residences were approved at Hanover Crossing with its consumer and employee base, Market Basket, other restaurants, and retail came, a nearby example of how housing is a catalyst to further investment and improvement. We respectfully submit the following additional matters for consideration relevant to the subcommittee's review. First, the Braintree Planning Board, per its statutory role, had issued a unanimous favorable review and recommendation for the mixed-use plan unit district text, section 617 before you of the ordinances and the concept plan. After public hearings on August 13th and October 8th, the Planning Board unanimously found that the proposal meets the purposes of the PUD ordinance, section 612, which has been on our books for a significant time, and satisfies master plan strategies. That is all set out at pages 3 through 14 of the Planning Board report. And really the essence of it is at page 14, where the Planning Board and Planning Director state, quote, "The planning staff is in a position to recommend that this MUPUD zoning move forward. The town and state policies on development and housing are clear. If people are not spending money and creating new real estate growth in Braintree, our financial base isn't growing either. The trends in new retail centers and transitioning older centers all provide for residential uses. The live-work model is alive and thriving in Massachusetts, and it's time that Braintree uses their existing retail stock, land, and excess infrastructure for something more productive. The days of empty parking lots, excess asphalt, open space with no public use or recreating benefit need to end," end quote. Secondly, we ask you to consider the process. The subcommittee and council votes are the second step of a three-step process to $140 million of economic development, the residences at South Shore. ZOM has been transparent at every step of the process. The unanimous planning board recommendation that you received is the first step in the PUD overlay to create the $140 million residences at an underutilized location in compliance with the purpose of PUD. Adoption by the subcommittee and council of the PUD text, section 617, drafted significantly by the planning director and reviewed by town solicitor KP Law, is the second step. After any approval by the town council of the PUD text, section 617, with its filed concept plan, any proposal then proceeds to engineered plans. The engineered plans and a special permit application are filed with the Braintree Planning Board for any proposed development, along with the stormwater report, traffic report, infrastructure analysis. During the Planning Board special permit public hearing process, which is the third step, that's where there are peer reviews of traffic, water sewer, stormwater, drainage, and mitigation is addressed. As stated at page 3 of the favorable Planning Board report, the applicant will undertake and/or fund any required study, analysis, and upgrades to the town's infrastructure to support the development program. If during that third step a special permit is not granted, the current existing zoning continues to apply. The PUD is not effective without a special permit issued by the planning board for a development. That is the first protection of PUD over generic rezoning, which is all we've seen in Braintree previously. With a wholesale rezone, as we've seen with other proposals, going from Residence B to Residence C or Residence B to general business, the prior zone is gone. With PUD, the old zoning continues to apply unless and until there is a special permit issued by the planning board for a development. So that protection is in the law, section 612G of our ordinances, and it states, quote, "In a PUD overlay district, all the zoning requirements of the underlying zoning district shall apply unless and until a special permit for a PUD has been issued by the planning board, end quote. PUD is consistent with our master plan, which presents South Shore Plaza as a critical asset and transformation area at page 20. Other core strategies of the master plan, like creating housing, preserving open space, here over 30%, are also fulfilled. And PUD zoning has yet a second protection that wholesale rezone doesn't have. PUD requires the concept plan. Section 612C3 of the Braintree zoning ordinances states, quote, the concept plans for the property must be submitted to the town meeting, now town council, for approval prior to submission to the SPGA, the planning board. When ZOM filed the PUD text with the council on June 21, ZOM also filed the required concept plan, and all materials went to the planning board for their hearings on August 13th and October 8th. There could not be a more thorough and comprehensive filing than made by Jim Dunlop and ZOM. The second protection means that when we go to the planning board for a special permit, the engineered plans must be in keeping with the concept plan. As stated at page 8 of the planning board favorable recommendation, town solicitor KP Law reviewed and wrote 617C or revisions to it to state that the planning board, quote, may grant a special permit for development within the MUPUD, and in so doing must find that the application as submitted is in keeping with the concept plan as approved and most recently amended, end quote. So a required finding by the planning board that the special permit approval is in keeping with the concept plan. ZOM commits to you through this, right through to the special permit, to what section 617 text and the concept plan provide, which is number one, a maximum of 325 residences, 10% of which are affordable for those earning up to 80% of AMI. Secondly, a maximum height of 4 stories. Thirdly, over 30% open space, which is significantly more than the open space percentage required in highway business. Fourth, no resident vehicular access to and from the development to and from Lakeside. Fifth, the requirement of a 13-high-foot berm, screening, and buffer as shown on the concept plan. You can easily see how planned unit development, PUD, is superior, more protective than wholesale or generic rezoning. At page 16 of the planning board report, it is well stated, quote, unlike a typical rezone application where no concept plan has been provided, the BZO section 612C3 states, quote, the concept plans for the property must be submitted to town meeting for approval prior to submission to the SPGA. The point of the concept plan is to demonstrate on a plan view what the use and dimensional table of the PUD would translate into visually. It is a great tool as it is often difficult to visualize text. Both of those tables require the use, type, and placement of buildings within the PUD. It goes beyond a typical rezone where anything in the zoning district would be permissible once rezoned, end quote. As stated, KP Law reviewed the provision that is provided in the text that you have before you, which does provide in 617C that when we go to the special permit, those plans, those engineered plans, and that application must be in keeping with the concept plan. So that is the second protection of the PUD. The third item to consider, in addition to the planning board favorable recommendation and the comprehensive process, is the favorable report dated October 7th of Carl Seidman, peer reviewer for the town. And he's a former senior lecturer at MIT Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and he confirmed the ZOM development and economic benefits to Braintree. Mr. Seidman found in his report of October 7th that ZOM's $140 million investment in Braintree will provide the over $2.3 million in pre-construction money to Braintree, which is building permit and utility connection fees, and then an average net tax revenue of $500,000 each year to Braintree. At page 1 of his report, Mr. Seidman states, the applicant's conclusion that the project will provide a substantial positive net fiscal impact is sound. And he goes on to state that the net positive fiscal impact is likely to be between $400,000 and $600,000, and that's an annual return. At page 5, Mr. Seidman states, quote, the estimate of 28 new school-aged children at ZOM is reasonable and well supported by data. Elevation apartments with 495 apartments, 170 more than ZOM, was one of the databases of our experts' economic report and school-aged children estimate. Elevation apartments with 170 more apartments has less than 25 school-aged children. So therefore, ZOM's 28 was a conservative estimate. And also, there are no 3-bedroom residences at ZOM. And Mr. Seidman also found at page 6 of his report that allocation of costs to ZOM based upon 28 school-aged children would be approximately $204,000, yet ZOM's report conservatively presented a higher cost of $279,000. So Braintree school enrollment is down approximately 10% since 2019 pre-COVID, from 5842 to 5237 in 2024, a drop of over 600 students. The closest school, Flaherty Elementary, is down 25% from 2019 pre-COVID of 376 to 281 in 2024. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, indicated in its 2017 study that the state has entered a period of long-term decline in school-age population, and MAPC found no relationship between housing production rates and enrollment growth rates for the 234 districts that they studied. ZOM looks forward to working constructively with the town and with the school department during the special permit and development construction processes. Further to economic benefits, ZOM pays for its own trash disposal, its own snow plowing, its own repair and maintenance of drives and infrastructure. Compact development like this is less stress on municipal service than probably the same number of disparately located homes. And new tax and fee revenue is just the beginning. New consumers and employees living at the residences will patronize existing businesses and bring new business to Braintree, an immense economic benefit. Adding quality housing, people living at large retail is the catalyst to further improvement, and we see it all around us at Hanover Crossing, Legacy Place, University Avenue, Marketplace, Linfield, Natick Mall, Chestnut Hill Shops, and so forth. Financially speaking, Braintree would need 20 or more developments in the pipeline to eclipse the $140 million investment that this one needed development accomplishes. Fact is, Braintree doesn't have $10, $14 million developments, or $27 million developments, or $35, $4 million developments, or 14, $10 million proposals in the pipeline to equal $140 million in development investment at the plaza in Braintree. And there's unlikely to be such a pipeline of projects with increased construction costs and interest rates, not to mention that the message has been out there that it's difficult to try to do a project in Braintree. And a letter of support from Braintree Electric dated August 12th, and it's number 22 in your book. It speaks to, quote, a significant decline in commercial and industrial business, with Bell's sales to this sector dropping by over 25%. This is a symptom of lack of growth in Braintree. Businesses leave but are not replaced, end quote. That's a financial fact that needs to change in a positive direction, right? Our town doesn't have the luxury to ignore robust economic development We can't function on continued overrides, increased taxes, depreciated municipal services, and that's not what residents expect. So we respectfully suggest it's time to move ahead with new growth, new revenue, necessary housing, a $140 million development at the South Shore Plaza. I'd just like to talk about the need for quality apartments, because that need is paramount, and it's clear. The demand is driven by, first, the exorbitant cost of a home purchase. The master plan itself, page 13, places the median home sale in Braintree at $615,250. That's at page 13 of the master plan. And that was 4 years ago. To buy such a home requires a substantial down payment that many young workers don't have. And then there's the overwhelming 80% mortgage balance with interest rates 2 to 3 times what they were just a few years ago, increasing from 2.65% to 6 to 7%. Prices and interest rates make home purchase infeasible or undesirable to many. That drives a demand for quality apartments, particularly with young workers. Secondly, many people are not interested in the burdens, time, and expense of home ownership. Many younger workers have good jobs, many earning over $100,000, and they're renters by choice. They're paying market rate rent at the residences at South Shore, when it comes online, Marina Bay, Quarry Hills, Lenox Farms, and others. They want quality apartments with indoor and outdoor amenities like ZOMs. Thirdly, the other demographic of apartment renters by choice is empty nesters. If an empty nester sells a home and wants to stay in Braintree, there are few choices, and none with the amenities of the residences at South Shore. That is the constituency of the ZOM apartments that they build. It's predominantly young professionals, empty nesters. The rent is approximately $3,000 per month on market rate. And this is significant because it's consistent with Braintree's master plan reference at page 48, which talks about, quote, create opportunities for multi-generational housing. They serve those generations, whether it be a mom, a daughter, a grandmother. It's multi-generational. ZOM meets the demonstrated need for young professional and empty nester apartments by providing all studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. There are no 3-bedroom units. The Urban Land Institute publication and Harvard Joint Study Center for Housing Studies indicate that single-person households, empty nesters, and couples without children make up a substantial majority of American households. Married couples without children remain the most common type of household. The traditional 2-parent household with children is now diminished in terms of its percentage of households. In addition to the 90% of the residences that are market rate, as I said, at approximately $3,000 per month, 10% of the residences are reserved for those earning not more than 80% of the average median income. And those residences include teachers, nurses, government employees, other hardworking people, some earning less than $70,000. As the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies states at page 2, quote, multifamily rental housing plays an increasingly important role in workforce housing, providing homes for our nation's teachers, firefighters, police officers, healthcare workers, and public employees. These vital workers contribute to the community. And many of them do qualify for the 10%, which includes workers earning up to 80% of the average median income. The town's master plan is required by Chapter 41, Section 81D, which calls for housing and economic development. The master plan statute concerns town-wide. It's not a standard of a master plan for one property. There's no such single master plan edict in the law. The statute requires Braintree to provide local housing opportunities, quote, for all citizens, end quote, and Braintree to provide, quote, economic development strategies for expansion or stabilization of the local economic base and the promotion of employment opportunities. The master plan, page 20, calls South Shore Plaza one of the town's key economic assets. It certainly is. South Shore Plaza is Braintree's commercial center since 1961, 63 years. Other developments, commercial and single-family residential, have been built, bought and sold around it. South Shore Plaza will remain a staple 100-plus acre economic engine for Braintree. It needs collaboration to evolve. It is 1.6 million square feet of shopping and dining, 3 times the size of Hanover Crossings retail, which is 543,000 square feet. Yet Zom and Simon aren't here tonight requesting 3 times the 300 residences at Hanover Crossing. We're pretty much in the same ballpark at 325 residences, very similar range, but we have 3 times the retail square footage of Hanover, pretty reasonable. The 325 residence density is appropriate and consistent with other multifamily developments in Braintree. Jonathan's Landing is 318 residences. Lennox Farms is 338 residences. There are various Braintree residential developments with greater density per acre. Wind Properties, the former Beld site, which is underway with site work, is about 37 units per acre. 84 Pearl Street, French Ave is over 34 units per acre. Landing Apartments is 83 units per acre. As you know, Simon Properties is publicly held. Tim and Clay will speak shortly, and they're highly experienced. They're the global real estate leader. During a recession in 2009, Simon, with town collaboration, invested tens of millions of dollars adding Nordstrom and Target to South Shore Plaza. South Shore Plaza has great location and no debt. It is profitable. As the region's largest shopping center, South Shore Plaza involves many leases and property rights that determine its path forward. What is before you tonight, adding quality residential, economic development for Braintree, is that path forward at large retail. It's a model implemented nationwide by Simon and other industry leaders, and the examples are all around us. There's no other project on the Braintree horizon that moves the needle, creating economic development and creating quiet upscale residences. The residences are located on South Shore Plaza's property. They're 2 football fields away from the closest single-family home, and as we've said, they're separated from the closest single-family home and separated from Laurie's Way by a high, dense berm with green giant arborvitae on top. We would ask respectfully for Braintree to work together with Zom, with Simon, to make the $140 million planned unit residences at South Shore a reality, where Zom will own and develop 7 acres and construct 325 upscale residences, and Simon will own the remaining 3.3 acres and repurpose the 16,000 square foot building that was formerly the 99 restaurant. We respectfully request the subcommittee's favorable recommendation of the mixed-use planned unit district text overlay and the concept plan, which, after requested council approval, would enable us to proceed to engineered plans and seek a special permit from the planning board to make the $140 million investment in quality housing and economic development, the residences at South Shore, a reality. I'd like to now introduce Jim Dunlop, who will just present the concept plan in more detail, and then, if it's okay with the chair and the subcommittee, we would have Clay Hallman and Tim Fox from Simon present the importance of approving quality residential at large retail centers as a catalyst to further improvement and investment. Thank you.
Evening. Jim Dunlop with Zom Living. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and effort and thought that you guys are putting into our project, and just wanted to give you a little bit of more qualitative, sorry about that, qualitative view of what we're doing. So when looking at a residential development, in this case, rental multifamily, looking for location, we're looking for three things really. Location for the site, location that the site sits in, and who the resident is in the area. So, the driving force of all of it is really, what does the resident want? Who are they and what do they want? And there are some very common aspects to their desires of a location. This location at South Shore Plaza checks all the boxes. One is they want a short commute, and they want good amenities, and they want a nice home to live in. So short commute here in amenities. Here is a picture of the commercial district that we sit in, which has office, it has industrial, it has a 1.6 million square foot mall with plenty of retail, it has restaurants, it has hotels, and it has access to amenities like the Blue Hills and the water, the bay. What it doesn't have, which you find in a lot of large commercial districts around the country, is multifamily, residential, not single-family homes, but rental housing. Access via the highway that you see, access via the train station that exists is all, top-notch for high-quality multifamily housing. That is the attraction. This is obviously, the town, the mall, and our position in it. In looking at this location, we are hearing about the master plan and the focus, the theme focus, core focuses that come out of it. Sustainable community, connected transportation network, housing options, 3 of the 5. Also strategic economic development, that's development in itself. And then modernize and expand town facilities. And we find that whenever we do a new project in any town, it has a component of improving, whether it's the water system or the power grid or roads or whatever, there's an aspect to that. We feel like we check all the boxes of the core themes that are going into the master plan that was created by Braintree. The resident is, in this case, they're not always the same, are young professionals, but they're not right out of college. They're young professionals, young couples, empty nesters, educated, college educated, making $125,000 a year or more. And the key to all that is that these people are focused on themselves, not in a selfish way, but themselves meaning their career, or or their desires, their recreation, or their desires for socializing. They're focused on the location. They're focused on not having to spend a lot of time maintaining their home. They want, they're renters by choice. They could buy a house, but they're renters by choice. They want to rent an apartment in a good location, a nice apartment in a good location. And these are the residents that we find in most locations like this. The site, which is what I'm here to talk about, I'll stop talking about the standard multifamily stuff and talk about the site plan. 3 aspects that I want to make sure I cover is the building itself, the inherent benefits of the site location and landscape. So as Frank gave you all the details of the development, 325 apartments, some of the more unique aspects to this site, this building, this location, usually, and in this case also, have to do with the site itself. We have a significant built-in amenity, and that's the green space, the reservoir, and the green space adjacent, and what we can do with new green space to integrate, tie in, and connect with the existing green space, as well as the mall, the lifestyle. The people want to live in a place where they can walk and have dinner, or walk and, pick up groceries, or walk to, hang out in the mall for a period of time and do some window shopping. Those are very significant amenities to the site. So designing a building, as ZOM does, it's best in class in its ability to design high quality, high design properties for their location. We don't just cookie cutter projects and plop them in locations around the country. We build something for its location. In this case, if you can see the cursor, access to the site is from Granite along the Mall Road. Arriving to the property, we've positioned an arrival court first, which has a drop-off and a few parking spaces for people who want to come to the office or the leasing office. And we position our lobby and amenities around that location, or at that location. So the main focal point is a connection to the mall and a connection to the new work that Simon's going to do with this existing building. And the lifestyle connection is towards the mall. So access here, arrival, the parking garage and loading is just down the Mall Road a little bit. Aesthetically designed so that from this view, which is the arrival court, you don't see any parking. And the way that's done is designing a wood frame building around a parking deck. So people access the parking deck, and the parking deck is the same number of levels as the residential. So you can park on your floor and go through a door and get to your unit. Arrival, parking, an internal and external outdoor space. The highest rated amenities for residents are location is number one, outdoor space. Fitness is huge, and indoor lounge and workspace. All that is centered right here. The amenities indoor, outdoor amenities that are in a courtyard, and the arrival court, also giving a variety of outdoor spaces connected to the building with some smaller outdoor courtyards. Having a connection to the green space and a connection to the community beyond the site, in this case, the mall property, we're going to build a walking, biking path through the green space, our created green space and the existing reservoir green space, where people can get outdoors, from the courtyards, or just come down the stairs to the back and hang out or take a walk. This is a rendering of what that would look like, the reservoir being kind of off to the right of the picture in the background. And, come down in the evening and walk over to, the potential new restaurant that's here, have a beer, have a taco, whatever, and walk home. That's the lifestyle. I can get to my job because I can get to the highway, I can get to the train, I can come home, I can sit for a bit and then walk over, and have dinner somewhere. That is the lifestyle and the concept. In this case, our opportunity is extensive open space, connected to extensive open space, connected to a regional mall that is sizable and doing well, connected to new development that happens at the mall because of the residential kicking it off. And the other aspect of it is, design-wise, is the architecture of both the building and the landscaping, blending that together. The landscape design has a few significant aspects. One we've talked about at the reservoir, the significance of it. The other, leading people through a landscaped walkway along the mall road to the mall. But the third significant aspect to it that Frank mentioned as well is the buffer. Since the last application, we've moved the building away from Lakeside Circle. It was, I think, 35 feet, and now it's 125 feet. And in order to give space, distance, just space, but also give space to create something in between. This is the berm that Frank mentioned, which with this space, we were able to build it up to 13 feet. And on top of that, and along the sides, we can look at it. You can see the berm here through these trees. It's significantly high. Landscaping down low and up it, but then putting giant arborvitae on top so that it does a shield, a visual shield that's continuous and is not seen in the summer. This is the building, the current building location that pokes out here as it comes out from. This is the existing gate. So that is the. I don't think there was anything else on the on landscaping. That is the landscape design where it meets the architecture. We've moved away from the contemporary architecture that we had in our prior application and gone to a more of a transitional architecture, not traditional, not contemporary, more transitional, with the use of brick, with the massing of more of a townhome size aspect to it, and breaking down the facade with corners, ins and outs, et cetera, to break down the size of the building a bit. So in Q&A, we can talk about any aspects of that you would like, but that's what I wanted to give you some detail on. And I think we're going to have Simon next, if that's...
What I was going to do is actually, I appreciate the presentation thus far. I'm going to have our planning director step up and talk a little bit about the planning board's recommendations first, and then we'll go back to them all.
Okay.
Mr. Riley.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the Ordinance and Rules Subcommittee, always a pleasure to be here. Excited this evening with an opportunity to present some of the materials from my report and also the Planning Board recommendation. Just to set out, we all know what we're talking about this evening, and just procedurally, the application was filed with the Town Council, transmitted to the Planning Board, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5, and our own Braintree Ordinance, Section 130, actually Article 15. The Planning Board is required to make a recommendation to the Town Council. As part of that recommendation, we are required to hold a public hearing. We fulfilled all the noticing requirements and held 2 public hearing sessions. The first one on August 13th and the second one on October 8th. Also part of the planning board review and made available in the report that was transmitted was the securing the services of a peer review consultant, Mr. Seidman, who conducted a fiscal peer review, and we have arranged for him to be in attendance at the full council meeting on next Tuesday to present his report. Attorney Marinelli covered some of the highlights of that earlier in his presentation, and I will touch on it very lightly. One important item I do want to note for the community members, for those in the audience tonight at home, and the members of the council, we did receive extensive public input during this process, both in opposition and also in support. We've provided probably 60 to 100 pages of minutes that detail extensive commentary from the public. We've also provided to the council all of the written emails and letters that were received through the public hearing process as well, and also had an opportunity to have a lot of dialogue with residents that came to the office and were just asking questions and asking to look at the plans. The proposal in a nutshell is to rezone into a PUD overlay district, 10.32 acres, portions of which are currently zoned highway business and residence B. What I'd like to do now, Mr. Chairman, is just do some high-level highlights from my staff report. I'm not going to get into 200-plus pages this evening, but if you could bear with me, I've tried to truncate this as much as I can. The PUD provides for multifamily housing, a use that is currently allowed in the highway business district by special permit at a much lower density. That would be regulated under 135-705. A portion of the land is Residence B, which is not a zoning district that's compatible with highway business, aside for some of the special permit uses. The town has demonstrated flexibility regarding the development of multifamily in the past on a case-by-case basis. The MUD further provides 10% of the multifamily units available to households earning at or below 80% of the AMI, and a lot of the amendments you'll see in the text reflect the process and current requirements in which we would permit units of that nature and how we would want those built out and marketed to provide inventory on the town's subsidized inventory. The MUPUD also provides for a dimensional and density table that lists all the criteria for setbacks in open space. Given the riverfront requirements here, I can anticipate both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission working with the applicant, if this is favorably voted upon, to really activate some of the open space areas that are out there and provide some further benefit to people living not only in the ZOM development, but in the neighborhood and those utilizing the South Shore Plaza. The MUD concept as proposed does not include any new streets or public infrastructure that the town would be responsible for. All private utilities access infrastructure with no maintenance requirements to the town. And that's something important to note. We struggle now maintaining the assets that we do have, and it's important to know that will not create any further financial impacts to the community. The MUPUD is proposed on a separate 10.3 acre site that will be carved out of the 120 acres in the South Shore Plaza. And the MUPUD provides for an opportunity for the South Shore Plaza to partner with a residential developer whose expertise is the construction and operation of multifamily development. The MUPUD allows for similar uses that exist at the South Shore Plaza, and the MUPUD is the first step and could be viewed as a catalyst in transforming the property while still maintaining the current asset until such time the market allows for further transformation. And these comments that I've made here relate primarily to the purpose of a PUD, which is the beginning section of 612. The PUD bylaw also talks about minimum standards, and those minimum standards are all met and exceeded under this proposal. They have in excess of 3 acres of land in the overlay. The open space requirements are in excess of the underlying zoning, and we're also providing for more than one use. In this particular case, retail and services, and also multifamily residential. So we're checking the boxes there to qualify as a PUD overlay district. The MUPUD as proposed meets the minimum frontage requirements on Lakeside Drive, noting that no access to any portion of the MUPUD will be off Lakeside Drive. As proposed, the public open space will likely have pedestrian and bicycle access off a shared multi-use path from Lakeside Drive or internal to the South Shore Plaza. Subject to the special permit process, Lakeside Drive could serve as a secondary means for fire and safety apparatus vehicles. Planning staff report also includes a section about the master plan as well, and highlighting some of those things that were mentioned earlier in earlier presentations. The planning staff is very familiar with the South Shore Plaza, the property and surrounding areas. I've been working on this particular property for 20 years. This property in the South Shore Plaza in its entirety are viewed as a prime opportunity for planning and visioning. Given the history of the property in the South Shore Plaza has been encouraged to do that. The Braintree Master Plan adopted in December 2023 highlighted the South Shore Plaza as a transition area. That word means something. That means we're looking for something to happen there. We're looking for some sort of transformation. The South Shore Plaza needs to take steps in redevelopment and the trends we see all over the country in retail and service areas. Opportunity for improvement and diversification of uses, buildings, facades, and all of these attributes will be achieved as part of this PUD. Several resale centers in Massachusetts contain residential uses. We've heard about all of these. I hear from residents. I go to Hanover, I go to Legacy Place, I go to Westwood. What do all of those have? They have residential uses as part of those development programs. Again, getting back to the master plan, and we talk about transformation areas, and again, number 2, the South Shore Plaza is one of the town's key economic assets and represents opportunities for redevelopment. As a community, I would hope that we begin to focus on this economic asset and that we work together with the South Shore Plaza so that we can work towards some opportunities and some redevelopment. They exist, and working together and having processes like these is how we will achieve those and get to that point. Quickly, would like to highlight some of these attributes in the master plan. In core theme 1, goal number 1, open space, natural resources, and neighborhood preservation. Protect, restore, and enhance water resources, natural landscapes, biodiversity, and wildlife. Preserve and protect residential neighborhoods. Work to conserve 30% of the town's total land area as permanently protected open space. So we have an opportunity here to set the open space, and it has been set at 30%. So continuing to provide sites that have 30% will continue to help in increasing our open space percentages in the community. Number 2, strategic economic development and vibrant local businesses. Goal number 2, planning for economic development and repurposing properties. Development strategy, community-supported economic growth plans for the area of the town that is appropriate for increased development. Repurpose key blighted and underutilized properties and areas of interest carefully and strategically based on comprehensive community-supported plans. Blight, maybe not, underutilized for sure, and when we're talking about this area, and what was described tonight by Mr. Marinelli and the team from ZOM was definitely described, or definitely to me, is a community-wide process. There has been a lot of opportunity to engage residents and to engage folks on this topic, and to hear from them and to hear their opinions. Create a community-supported plan envisioning the transformation of the South Shore Plaza site is strategy number 2A. So we have identified what we are doing this evening as one of our strategies. Strategy 2E, incentivize redevelopment of underutilized properties to become more vibrant. So when I start to read these and read them out loud, and we look at the plan here, and we've heard some from the presentations, for me it starts to come together. I start to visualize things. I start to see these goals and strategies actually becoming reality. A safe and connected transportation network. This opportunity here for me, I'm particularly interested in pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, being able to move people around the property, and being able to allow them to take advantage of some of the assets now at the water resources. Residential neighborhoods and housing options. Goal number 2, diverse housing options. Carefully consider a diverse range of well-designed and compatibly scaled housing options that are supported by the community. Strategy 2A, consider community-supported refinements to the zoning bylaw to promote residential and mixed use, and that's exactly what we're doing here this evening. Strategy 3B, through zoning amendments, encourage development of new housing options within walking distance of new commercial and industrial uses and/or employment opportunities. So again, as I look at these, I'm continuing to check boxes about locating multifamily residential in this particular area. Goal 4 is to maintain the state's current housing goals, and I want to commend ZOM in our early meetings, even in the first process. One of the first things that I spoke about was you need to provide 10% affordable housing. We had a pending inclusionary ordinance. At that point, we don't have that anymore, yet they're still at the table with their 10% offer to the community, which I think is something that is definitely worth paying attention to. And one of the last things is expanding and modernizing town facilities, services, and infrastructure. Continue to invest in public infrastructure improvements to address infiltration, inflow issues across the system. So I did make some comments earlier in my presentation that this would all be private, but in the event that there is something lacking in the public infrastructure that they would be connecting to or need to take advantage of, they're committed and have committed to undertake that work to make those upgrades. Before I get into the recommendation, my comments in the planning board's recommendations, I want to just pause for 1 second and rewind a little bit back to 2018, and I'll be brief. In 2018, the plaza came forward with a rezone request for a Residence B portion of the property. At that time, this concept and idea of a master plan at the South Shore Plaza became something that the community in our previous administration became very tied to. Since the withdrawing of the 2018 rezone request, the property then came forward with a PUD concept in 2022, and then again in 2024. 6 years later, and nothing has happened at the South Shore Plaza beyond tenant fit-ups interior to the mall. I just want people to take a minute to pause, and it's taken me a while to even come up with this sort of line of thinking, but it's not up on the screen anymore. But for the purposes of a 10-year period, when we started talking about this master plan, what we have in front of us now, we look at a permitting schedule and a construction schedule. This is the 10-year plan. This is what would have happened over that 10-year period. So I think that's something important. There's a lot of time has gone by and nothing has happened. And I think it's an opportunity. We're grateful, or at least I think we're grateful that ZOM is here and Simon is still engaged and wants to do things here. But I think we really have an opportunity. I'll get into the recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Since the August public hearing, the planning staff has been working with Carl Seidman on coordinating a lot of meetings. He did a lot of outreach to several of the departments. I want to thank my staff for coordinating quite a bit of that and taking the lead on that. This work included on-site meetings, one-on-one interviews, discussions with the assessor, school department, DPW, etc. His report is included in the report I've provided to the council, and noting again that he will be here next year to present those and be available to any questions. Reader's Digest, he is in agreement with the Forgier report that has been submitted, the methodology that went into that report, and he estimates that the net positive fiscal impact post fees would be $400,000 to $600,000 a year. In addition to the peer work, the staff has had an opportunity to work with the applicant team to fine-tune the MUPUD text to ensure the overlay is comprehensive, complete, and covers all of the language to ensure the proposed text is compliant with Section 135, 612. I have provided a clean copy. The red line version's a mess. I apologize. And that is in the report provided to the council. The MUPUD ordinance is just that and not a special permit decision. All of the items specifically related to the site plan criteria and PUD special permit criteria will be addressed in future decisions when and if sought. The planning staff is in a position to recommend that this MUPUD zoning move forward. The town and the state's policies on development and housing are clear. If people are not spending money in creating new real estate growth in Braintree, our financial base isn't growing either. The trends in new retail centers and transitioning old centers all provide for residential uses. The live-work model is alive and thriving in Massachusetts, and it's time that Braintree uses their existing retail stock land and excess infrastructure for something more productive. We've heard about the empty parking lots and asphalt. I'll skip over that sentence. The zoning process has allowed and further encouraged discussion and dialogue with town staff, the administration, and residents. The dialogue's been informative, cooperative, and educational. Allowing the South Shore Plaza to diversify and partner with Zom Living is the first step in this regional transformation, as we've noted in our master plan. The process has enabled the planning staff to complete the analysis, work with the appropriate professionals, and most of all, the dialogue with the residents, whether it's in favor or in opposition. Our master plan highlighted the South Shore Plaza as a transition area and is one of the many steps the town will take to aid that, and this MUD-PUD proposal is one of the many steps the town will take to aid in that transition. For the reasons contained in the staff report, the planning staff recommends the planning board make a favorable recommendation. So this recommendation was brought to the planning board at their October meeting, and a couple things were brought up at the planning board meeting. One of the items, and I've itemized these in the report, was the discussion of a, quote, sunset clause, which means if you don't do something by this date, this goes away. We had a phone conference with Carolyn Murray of KP Law, and she felt as though that wasn't necessarily something that she would that would support. The town, the council, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, at any point, a day after, if this is adopted, 20 years after it's adopted, can amend zoning at any point. And that's within our right, and if we feel a need to repeal the PUD, that is also within our right. There was some questions about the concept plan and that being in keeping once a special, the site plans submitted with the special permit in keeping with the concept plans. We've added some extra language. Attorney Marinelli highlighted that earlier. That has been added to the text. We've made some minor revisions to the notes for clarity in the dimensional table. And those were basically the revisions from the second planning board meeting. And in closing, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the planning board voted a 4-0-0 favorable recommendation to the town council.
Thank you, Ms. Rosley.
You're welcome.
You can, same as before. Hold on. Don't look at my password. There we go. Do you know how to make it? Spacebar. Yeah, space, but the arrows will move it, but I wanted to fill the screen. It's not blowing up.
The arrow is not moving it.
Sorry.
This is like the nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Not sure what happened there. Let's see. I got to go back and find it. Oops.
Do you open the PDF or the PowerPoint?
That's a good question. Shut it down and start over. That's always the key.
Hey, we got it. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Clay Hallman. I am the head of real estate research for Simon Property Group. My job entails understanding and tracking what is going on in the shopping center industry and the retail industry, and then working with and supporting our leasing and development and upper management, looking at properties, understanding what they're going to look like in the future, what's the best product types, and the best tenants that will be the best fit for those properties. So I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for having me. I love talking about malls, but I will try to be brief. You know about Simon. We are the biggest mall owner in the country. We have about 115 centers. Besides South Shore Plaza, we have other properties in this market that you probably know: Copley, North Shore, Burlington, Cape Cod, and others. We also own about 80 value centers that are either called premium outlets or mills, and we also have a couple of those here with Rentham Village Premium Outlet just up the road, and Merrimack up in New Hampshire. I think the important part, though, for this is we are the largest mall owner in the country, but what makes us stand out is we own quality shopping centers. We own some of the best shopping malls in the country, and we're known for doing our development and evolution of shopping centers. And while other mall owners have kind of failed over the last 2 decades, we've done a really good job of keeping our properties relevant and making them places where customers and tenants want to be. So what is going on with the mall industry? It's been a bit of a transition the last decade. And what a lot of people think, a lot of my friends, when they see me and ask me how my job's going, they think, they see the headlines about the mall is dying and dead malls and all of that. And that there is some of that going on for sure. But the truth is we're really in this period of a mall bifurcation where we're having mall winners and mall losers. And malls are either getting better or they're getting worse. And so we're kind of in this shakeout period trying to figure out which malls are going to be the winners. So how did we get here? First and foremost, we have way too much retail in the United States. Every town got a mall in the 80s and 90s. We built power centers that had Targets and Walmarts. We built malls without roofs called lifestyle centers. Then we built outlet malls. End of the day, we have more square footage per person in the United States than any other country in the world, ×2. So that was kind of the kindling, and then the spark was the internet. From online sales being just a couple percentage points to being now 35% of all retail sales. So it's really been to change the way retailers do business, change the way people shop. But the news is retailers can't just be online. It turns out that good, successful retailers today need to be omni-channel, which is online and stores. So they don't need as many stores, but they still need stores. They need those stores for people to buy goods, but also to do returns, to buy online pickup. They use them as a way to acquire customers. So it's a very important piece of their business. But with fewer stores, they want to be in the best locations. They want to be in locations that are super regional locations, but also have lots of eyeballs and lots of traffic, because that's the best way for them to acquire customers. So fewer retailers also means fewer malls. So many malls will go away, but there will be successful malls in the future. Those malls will look different than they've looked in the past. Primarily, the biggest change will be department stores. It won't be as dependent. We're seeing that with Lord & Taylor and Sears already at South Shore. So less dependent on department stores, less dependent on apparel in general, more food and more experiential entertainment stuff, more mixed use in nature, and then ultimately the ones that survive will be more successful and have larger trade areas. So here is the big question: which malls will be those that survive? And for me, it's three main things. First and foremost, it's real estate. You know, South Shore Plaza has irreplaceable real estate. You could never build that today. So you need really good real estate, and then you can work with that and work with retail, office, hotel, residential, whatever you need. But real estate is the most important, and that's what we have at South Shore. And then you need proactive ownership that's well capitalized and is experienced. It's not easy to get redevelopments in the mall world done, especially with the department stores owning their own space a lot of the times, dealing with zoning changes and whatnot. It can be a long, tedious kind of grind, and I think Simon's one of the few that is able to do that today. And then finally, it's important to have local collaboration, and that's why we're here today, so that hopefully we can be on the same page with the community. So this is where I usually go on about all the different mixes, but I'm going to truncate that. I'll just say that what used to be seen at malls is now more like this kind of stuff, more mix of uses, non-traditional anchors. We're doing a lot of food and entertainment, sports with these outdoor fields at Dick's House of Sport. We have about 20 hotels in our properties now. We have medical office, and then we have this large residential pipeline. Even in our last conference call last week to the investors, our CEO, made a comment, said residential and retail goes kind of hand in glove. It works together, and that's an important part of what we're looking to do in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Clay. Tim Fox, Simon Property Group for South Shore Plaza. As Clay was mentioning, residential has become a very important part of our business. The introduction and integration of residential uses at our retail properties, specifically our suburban centers, has been a growth trend for our company over the last 10 plus years. And we're now approaching a little over 10% of our mall portfolio with in-place or planned residential projects. Here's a sampling of some of the residential projects that we have at properties across the country, in Texas, in Minnesota, and in Georgia. And these are some of our premier properties, and that has been the case and the trend, and we expect that to continue. We've had a lot of success partnering with best-in-class residential developers like ZOM in adding Class A multifamily residential developments to our properties. Our experience has been resoundingly positive, and we're fully confident that the same will be true here. As Clay was mentioning, there's a symbiotic relationship between retail and residential uses, and that relationship has resulted in ongoing investment beyond the initially planned residential projects. Here's a few other examples of projects that we're working on in the Southeast, in Pennsylvania, again in Georgia, and on the West Coast in California. One good example of the sort of development momentum has been exhibited at Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota. Edina, Minnesota is a suburb of the Twin Cities, and Southdale was one of their very first enclosed shopping malls in the country. Simon acquired the property in the mid-2000s. Over the last 10 years, Southdale has experienced a bit of a renaissance, and it's taken on a new identity with the full mix of uses. All of this change started in 2014 with a project called One Southdale Place. One Southdale Place paved the way for successive development projects, including a hotel, restaurants, Lifetime Fitness, restoration hardware, and more recently, a local high-end grocery store and entertainment uses. And as you can see, that development is projected to move on into the future. Interestingly, Southdale Center, as one of the first enclosed shopping malls, was kind of the front end of this trend way back in the 60s, and it's now at the front end of a new trend. And that trend is the integration and evolution of shopping centers, the success of One Southdale and the resurgence of Southdale Center has been the subject of 2 Wall Street Journal articles and as well as a feature piece on NPR. Bringing us back to South Shore Plaza and the residences at South Shore, we feel that this project is that catalyst. We have the utmost confidence in the ZOM team to deliver the type of first-class product this property and the community deserves. There's been mention of a master plan, and I want to take this opportunity to say that, our master plan is the continued improvement of South Shore Plaza, and this project is a vital step in that process. This project has our full attention. And development at mature retail properties like South Shore Plaza, it's an incremental process, and this happens over the period of several years, like it did at Southdale Center, where you had to have a 10+ year period of time, and not all of those pieces of the puzzle were choreographed in advance. That evolves over time, and it's the reaction to the market needs and the changing environment at the property. This is the first step, is the residence at South Shore. I can tell you that the second step would be the redevelopment of the 99 building, and we're working with a great tenant, and we're very hopeful to make an announcement later this year as to who that user will be. It's an exciting project, and part of the attraction for that tenant was the residence at South Shore and the evolution of the property as a whole. I would like to say that step 3 would be the redevelopment of the Lord and Taylor building. Unfortunately, we don't control that building. That building is leased to a third party. Perhaps in the future that would be an opportunity, but right now that building and the land adjacent to it is not under our control. It's a lease space. So this is going to be a process that takes place over the course of years, and we think that this is absolutely the perfect start to that. Thanks a lot.
Attorney Marinelli, did you want to wrap it up?
No. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the subcommittee. We really appreciate your time and attention this evening. We respectfully suggest that we have met all of the purposes of the PUD and the text amendment that you have before you. The concept plan will be with us through the process, and it'll evolve into the engineered plans that'll go to the special permit authority if the text amendment is adopted and we're given the chance to create what would be a great economic development for Braintree. So with that, if there are questions that we can answer, we're happy to do that. And thank you.
Thank you for the presentation tonight. Any members of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules wish to ask some questions? It could be to any of the presenters that presented tonight. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. I will start with questions related to traffic because the concept plan in this case is much more relevant in a PUD than it is in a rezone. So since we are expecting the proposal to be very closely related to what's come forward in the concept plan, I put some time and attention into looking at the traffic study that was issued for the planning board. And the conclusion of Vanass and Associates is that the average weekday number of increased trips is 1,132 trips. And those will go in various directions. Most of them will go towards the I-93 interchange, and then Some of them will go up Common Street, and a few of them will go up Forbes Boulevard, and some of them will go the other way on Granite Street towards Five Corners. But I have 2 questions. One is, how is the number arrived at? There's no mention of methodology in the report. So how is that number arrived at? And the second question that I have is, the report also concludes that it's a level of impact that would not be readily apparent over existing conditions. So it's just that the report says 1,132 additional trips would not be a level of impact that would be apparent. And I just need to have that explained because it doesn't seem intuitively possible.
So I'll try it first, and then Jim can step up. But we don't have our traffic engineer here tonight because traffic, as I think the planning director would testify, is the appropriate subject at the special permit process. The special permit process, that's where you have the peer review of traffic. But in terms of the number that you started with, that's average weekday. But the peak hour is definitely something that gets the attention, and that's only 102 in the morning, and in the evening it's 97, and in the Saturday midday it's 97. So the raw data that you cite is throughout the whole day period, but the peak hour is the pivotal thing that peer reviewers and everyone looks at. And, you know, the conclusion is really, accordingly, traffic volume increases resulting from the project outside of I-93 would range from approximately 4 vehicles to 14 vehicles, or less than 1 additional vehicle every 4 to 15 minutes during the peak traffic volume hours. A level of impact that would not be readily apparent over existing conditions. That's the conclusion. So that's based on trip distribution being predominantly to the I-93 corridor, the Granite Street corridor. The input that we've had from Jeff Dirk, who is perhaps the best in the business and someone we deal with on a lot of projects, is that there's timing, there's interactive software changes that can be made along the Granite Street corridor that will make traffic flow better. So, you know, notwithstanding the numbers and the lower numbers in the peak hour than what was stated in terms of, I think that's probably a 24-hour period. We would be working towards mitigation and mitigating anything that is attributable to the residential. Residential today, people come and go at different times of day, a lot of people working at home. I know that in our own neighborhood, on where I live, there's Lenox Farms, there's Middle Commons, there's Jonathan's Landing, you know, all within my walking route, there's hundreds of units. And we don't really experience delay at the roundabouts in front of Lenox Farms. So residential is really something that can certainly be addressed and handled, and particularly given the trip distribution predominantly to and from the expressway and that corridor.
Jeff Dirk at VAI did do a traffic study, did traffic counts, to answer your how question. The traffic, what he studied were all the intersections on Granite, all the traffic at the mall, all the traffic towards Common existing, and what are those flows. And then the standard for multifamily traffic, since the property doesn't exist yet, he can't measure it. But there is a standard, an engineering standard, that he applied to traffic counts and therefore where those flows will be going. And as Frank was saying, what you're referring to is the traffic he is suggesting in peak hour is going to go local, meaning to Common, 86% of it's going the other way towards granite. And he has suggested signal studies and signal upgrades software-wise that will be studied and will be implemented as part of the mitigation. That's a special permit process, the full study and traffic flow analysis.
So you're saying that there's a standard of,
Sure.
a known standard of multifamily traffic that
Volume.
has been applied to,
Existing traffic flow.
right?
Studied, engineering studies.
Uh-huh.
I'm just
Okay.
going to pause you there for a second. Director Rossi gave me sort of the peekaboo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Councilor Flaherty's question, a trip generation assessment has been done for this project. How they figure out how many vehicles, there is something called the Institute of Traffic Engineers, and they study these types of developments all over the country. The residential categories are bountiful, from single-family to low-rise, multifamily, high-rise, urban, non-urban, close to transit, et cetera, et cetera. It's based on the number of units and then a multiplier that the traffic engineer calculates to get that number. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossi.
Okay, and then the secondary concern thing, which I think also can be maybe answered by Mr. Dunlap, is that the traffic engineer references a comprehensive transportation improvement program with physical improvements and trip reduction measures that would be intended to offset the predicted impact. Can you elaborate on what ZOM is prepared to support for that initiative? Because that's very vague.
He's made suggestions for software improvements at the intersection, 6 or 8, I think it's 6 intersections on Granite. Actually, I think it's 8, from Wood Road all the way back, I think, to 5 Corners, which is an upgrade, traffic flow upgrade to the software to make the traffic flow properly with the added traffic and improve the existing condition, I believe.
Okay. So it's mainly about improving the intersections as they are and
Exactly.
not about adding a shuttle service or anything to
No.
transport commuters
He
to
was
the
not,
T.
yeah, he was not suggesting any of that.
Okay. So having said that, I'm going to move away from traffic and return to this idea of heat islands, because one of the things that we didn't discuss a lot during the master plan process, but something that was important to me was the reduction of these heat islands in Braintree. And this project is described as something that would reduce heat islands, but can you elaborate on how that development will contribute to the elimination of a heat island? Because I understand that there's going to be a large earthen berm that will be topped with extensive vegetation, and certainly that would contribute to cooling things down. But even though greenery will also be planted and maintained elsewhere, there's going to be a wooded area that will be removed. And that wooded area features some mature trees and certainly vegetation. And it's not cultivated, it's not intended, nobody's taking care of it to make it beautiful. But I think as vegetation, you're taking that away and adding some cultivated areas. And how do you know that it's going to net out as a reduction of the area as a heat island?
I can't say there's a study that gives a number. But removal of the asphalt, yes, and we are removing green as well, but putting back 39% or 30 to 40% open space that's going to be green, and the new buildings these days do roofing that does not reflect it more, or it reflects, does not absorb heat. So the newer building technology and the green open space replacing the parking lot is the conceptual reduction of a heat island.
Okay, so even though it's a building and not greenery, it's still a net, it still reduces the heat because it's reflecting it from the roof rather than absorbing it as asphalt would do?
Right.
Okay, but that's not, there's no like universal standard calculation that you've applied to arrive at this conclusion?
Not that I know of. We can investigate it and come up with the analysis if you want.
No, that's okay.
But we haven't done it, so.
The next question that I have is, I think, for Melissa Santucci-Razzi. So what I'm interested in is to do with the inclusionary component of this project, which has been 10% in each proposed iteration. So why do you feel that a 10% inclusionary component is appropriate for a development of this scale? We know that workforce housing is really important to Braintree, and we know that we're trying to reach a 10% goal of workforce housing in our total housing stock. This won't put us behind if it includes 10%, but neither does it bring us forward. So why is 10% sufficient in this case, in your view?
If I may, through the chair, 10% is typically the standard if you look at most inclusionary zoning bylaws. There are some communities, more urban communities, which much higher density allowances that tend to go to 12 and sometimes even 15%. Understanding sort of our housing stock, where we are in regards to our 10%, I felt as though that was an appropriate item to include at an appropriate percentage, given that we don't have any type of inclusionary bylaw. Our previous drafts had some numbers that personally I felt were in excess and not achievable. And I think the goal here, and what I've included in my report in more detail, is we want to have the inclusionary component promote the construction of the housing and not, in fact, hinder the housing. This will not, in essence, push us into a higher percentage category, but it will maintain the work that we've already completed locally. When I talk about these units, or we talk about these units, I want to make a distinction. These are not workforce units. These are units that are deed restricted to households earning 80% or below of AMI. There may be potential discussions of workforce units once we get into the special permit process, but those units wouldn't be something that would count on the subsidized inventory. So those wouldn't be something that we would need honed in on in the zoning as a protection. If there is a desire and discussions related around workforce housing, those units would be available to households earning above 80 up to 120% of AMI, much higher income bracket.
Okay, is there like another plan that Braintree has to help us reach the 10% goal that is also part of the master plan? Because if we're not going to ask developers to include more than 10%, how will we ever get there?
We're already there on paper. So I've presented a variety of different information in different venues in the community, in different groups. I don't have that data with me tonight, but it is a combination of the units at Windjammer, the few units that we've added at the Fraser projects. It includes the 40B units that we likely will be having to issue a building permit for in the near future. And there was one more, and Allen Street, I'm sorry. Those in total take us to about 10.14%.
Okay. Well, I did not know that, so thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I appreciate that. The last couple of questions that I have are for Simon
Thank you.
Properties. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I appreciate your presence and being part of this public process. You answered some of my questions through your presentation, so that's good. I'm trying to filter them out so I don't ask them again. But I'll start with this. What proportion of the plaza property is currently under the direct control of Simon Properties?
When you're talking about proportion, you're talking about acreage or square footage within the property itself?
Percentage.
So right now, we are unable to make modifications of any kind of major nature outside the premises without the approval of some of the major tenants. So to answer your question, 0% without their input and approval in certain circumstances. In terms of ownership, we own the entirety of the property. We lease to various stakeholders. Some have long-term interests, some are shorter-term interests. Am I answering that properly?
Well, I can understand how not having direct control of all of each part of the property, aside from the leases that you are responsible for agreeing to, the leases that you've entered into, not having direct control over some portions of the plaza is a problem for making decisions on how to treat the entire property as one whole piece, because you're not the boss of all of it. But is there a plan to bring more of the property under your control should that opportunity arise?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, we own the entire property. We own the property unencumbered. We lease the property to many different entities. For example, small shop tenants or kind of the major tenants like Macy's or Nordstrom. Some of the major tenants have input and approval rights over certain proposals that we make, including this project where we obtained approval of some of our major tenants. Is there the likelihood that we would recapture some of that space in the future? Yes, that's absolutely a likelihood. I mean, all leases have a term, some longer than others, and we ultimately recapture that space, when that term comes to date.
Okay, so as you work with other people who are stakeholders in the property, why is it that you are pursuing this piecemeal strategy with development for the plaza? Why not put forward a PUD proposal for the whole property so that Braintree could see how these different components fit together in a way that complements each other?
So we're working with the projects that we can execute at this time. So we feel like this is a project we can execute at this time. Other major projects we have speculated on and we're thinking about, but there's a lot of the property. In fact, as I said, most major projects will require input and approval from certain major leaseholders. Is there an opportunity to regain some of that space? Yes, there is. Thinking about kind of long-term vision, that's something we do. And as I mentioned in my remarks, our master plan is the continued improvement. And frankly, that changes really day to day because, we don't know the future. Some tenants are going to be staying for a long period of time and some tenants are going to be exiting. So making plans on, tenant X or tenant Y, in some respects is speculative, and we don't tend to do that in a public forum.
Okay, well, historically, there's been the Nordstrom's wing, and then Dave & Buster's, and then there was a parking requirement reduction, and then the land that we're discussing tonight has had several proposals over time. And I think that residents have a lot of concerns over, what's the overall direction of the plaza? And while I can certainly see that this seems achievable because this part of the property is not under lease, that you don't have to have a conversation with any of the other stakeholders that you deal with or have lease agreements with or anything like that. It is difficult for the community to evaluate the impact of this project. When it's impossible to know, or for them to know what you know is what you know, but they don't have a knowledge about like what's going to happen in the future to the parking lot around Dave & Buster's. That's a big piece of land. What's going to happen there? I don't feel that you're prepared to discuss that publicly tonight, but those are the questions that are on their minds because they want to know what's going to happen adjacent to their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And then, well, I'll let you comment on that.
Sure. I would say that this project did require the approval of major leaseholders. So despite the fact that it's adjacent and not connected to the property itself, it did require the approval of major leaseholders. And just using your specific example, Dave & Buster's is a tenant. They have a lease that extends for multiple years. We have no plans of developing anything in that parking lot. That's a parking lot that is critical to their use.
Okay. Do you see additional housing as part of the overall plan for the plaza?
We don't have any plans for that at the moment, no. I mean, like I said, our focus is entirely on this project. And so we have no plans at this time for future, residential projects. Is that a possibility, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? It is a possibility, but that's not, we don't have anything planned.
Okay. The South Shore Plaza is Braintree's largest tax payer. This is known by actually a lot of people. We talk about it a lot. And for that reason, it's economically really important to Braintree that the plaza thrive and be successful. And, but I noticed that the assessed value of the building has dropped considerably by $36.9 million. So what accounts for such a large drop? It hasn't been that low since 2011.
I would say that's outside of my area of expertise. Our tax department is well equipped to answer that. I don't tend to venture into that part of the business, so I'm not sure I can answer that question.
It's a big drop in value. And it matters to Braintree that it is reduced. To what extent do you see the addition of this project as an improvement in that area?
Well, as I mentioned in my remarks, I mean, I do see this project as a catalyst for future development. The planning director, Santucci Razi, made the comment that, this has been quite a process. It's been years in the making. We think that this is absolutely the right development for this part of the property. We think that it will unlock future development. Specifically what that is, the entire picture is unknown to me and really anybody at this point in time. And I think an obvious step two is the redevelopment of the 99 building, and we have good plans for that. I have some ideas of what step 3 would involve. Like I had mentioned, I think the Lord and Taylor building is an obvious candidate. Unfortunately, we don't control that building. If we were to obtain control over that, I think that's a logical next step in this evolutionary process.
Okay. I have one last kind of comparatively minor question, but if Jim Dunlap would come forward, that would be great. How long is the proposed walking and biking path that you have identified on your concept plan?
Good question. I didn't measure it. This would be a guess, but it's probably 800 to 1,000 feet. How long is it, is what you were asking, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, 800 to 1,000 feet.
I can measure it and send you a number, if you like.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Those are my questions for now. I'm sure that the others have questions of their own. I'll let them take the floor. Thank you.
Councilman Moore?
On the text of the proposed ordinance, I'm looking at the table of uses, and one use that struck me, it's Table 1, under Section 135-612-1D. One of the uses by right that's included in here is a hotel or motel. That is of concern to me, that because I don't think it's congruent with the idea that multi-use development should complement residential rather than compete with it. And so my concern is, I note that there's no plan currently for the development of a hotel in this project. My question is, would there be any concern if this language or the use by right of a hotel under this ordinance, would that provide any impediment to your project?
No, we would not have any concern about
Okay.
removing that. That was an expanded table that I think the planning director would simply say that she went down the uses that are in the bylaws and just put it in. Most of the retail and other uses that pertain to the 16,000 square foot former 99 building, you will see that those categories are all based on the 16,000 square foot number. That use of retail 16,000 or less would be by right. If something was proposed to expand the footprint or go up, then that would be a special permit. So
All right, thank
that was
you.
the intent. But we don't have any objection to striking the hotel use.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that's really my only question. Councilor Flaherty's questions covered a lot of mine. But my intention is at the appropriate time, whether it be in this committee or at the council, is to move to amend and strike hotel motel from a right or a use by right under this proposed zoning ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Councilor Quilty?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody who came out tonight to speak to us. I have a question that is related to the impact on the Braintree school systems. I understand there's 325 units in the building. It's divided up in between studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Families, or maybe, I guess families that have children would most likely be in the 2 bedrooms. And you came up with the figure of 28 possible students for the Braintree Public Schools. I'm just wondering how you got to that figure.
That was a figure created by Mark Forgier, our economics fiscal impact review. And actually backed up by Carl Seidman, the peer review of his report. But he studied other similar size properties in the area and what school-age kids exist there. And as Frank mentioned in his remarks, a larger property, basically a stone's throw away, has fewer kids. A 492 unit property has 25 kids. And our 325 unit property, we're estimating 28. And it's fairly scientific if you go into Mark's report. He looks at several properties, looks at each unit type, looks at how many kids exist, and calculates, from there. And one comment on your comment is that we find that rental housing does not generate school-age kids. 2-bedroom apartments sound nice, but that's not a family unit. It's the 3 bedrooms where you find more. Still not a lot of school-age kids, but you find more in 3-bedroom. And we decided not to do any 3-bedroom units at this property. So we feel like it's a conservative estimate, actually.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that 28 extra children would be an imposition at this point in time in the Braintree Public School system. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay. No, thank you, I'm good.
Ms. Rossi. So I'm going to apologize if I jump. Council Flaherty, I think as Council Moore indicated, went through a lot of my questions, so it made me be jerky in some of the questions I ask because they're not going to flow as well anymore. But this was obviously has been a long-standing sort of saga, if you will. Initially proposed in 2022, defeated, refiled. I believe, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe the last time around you had concerns about the projects, I think somewhat the density, but also its connectivity to the mall as a whole. And it seems like your opinion has changed somewhat dramatically. So what's changed in your opinion to sort of, change your viewpoint on this?
Truthfully, our policy and our administration, Counselor. I have been allowed to voice my opinions on this project and give my professional opinions and work with the community and work with the developer. And what you have in front of you this evening is my professional opinion.
Okay. Council Flaherty touched on the 10% low income. I think you answered that question well. Another issue that we consistently saw here talked about in the community and also is part of the master plan is obviously a commitment to senior housing and veterans housing. I know in the initial sort of proposal back in 2022, there was senior housing included, and it does not appear here now. What's your belief here about the lack of senior housing, the lack of veterans housing when we are sort of trying to connect this to the master plan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Another initiative that we have going on in the planning department is we secured a grant through the state, and we have recently completed a feasibility and analysis of 74 and 90 Pond Street. Those materials are in their final stages, and some of the members here this evening participated in some of those meetings. And we're looking for potential, obviously the council would be involved, RFP for that particular property. Looking to utilize both buildings and some additional buildings. There are some attributes in those buildings, including the gym and the cafeteria. It is a town-owned property in a nice setting, different type of setting for seniors and veterans than the setting that we have here.
Okay. And I'm going to give the plaza a chance to answer this too, so but I'm going to ask you first. At this juncture, what sort of, it was touched on a little bit through Council Flaherty's questions, but what sort of commitment do we have, or in the discussions you have, do we have from the plaza as a whole to continue, if this was to pass, to continue to further their property as well?
From the South Shore Plaza?
Yeah.
At this time, we have not been focused on engaging the plaza on the master plan component. We've been really focused on what has been presented to us and what we have in front of us to review. Just my professional opinion, I think that if this does move forward, you will eventually start to see some other types of activity happening there, or at least that is the goal. We've seen several locations augmented by residential, some of those I spoke of earlier, and those areas they're thriving. They're doing very well.
We discussed a little bit, there will be access for fire still through the back.
If I may just move over to the screen, Mr. Chairman, and also to Councilor Flaherty's earlier questions. And of course, we haven't dived into the details on this quite yet. But there are some paths that you see on this plan that Mr. Dunlop tried to respond to earlier, and kind of looking at the natural sort of progression of Lakeside Drive into this site, noting that they own a very large portion of the unaccepted part of Lakeside Drive. That's in the document set as well. and understanding that the fire department is going to want adequate access, especially given it's a residential structure. People will be living and sleeping in that building. And then just looking at the opportunity to connect the neighborhood to the plaza and thinking of ways to bring bikes and pedestrians and also, if needed, emergency vehicles through this area. Some of the other things that we've been looking at, and we can have that drawing back, is this circle as well. What is that? Well, it belongs to the South Shore Plaza. Someone put a circle in there. We don't own it. South Shore Plaza owns it. So there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of talk about Lakeside Drive and people, potentially accessing that or going down there. And why would they do that? Well, because it's a nice, wide, inviting cul-de-sac at the end. And not negating the berm at all, but we have been talking about, and I've been brainstorming about ways to potentially green up this area as well, and really trying to create a even more defined separation. I know there might be some school bus turnaround, and we'll consider those types of things, but really looking at ways no one's going down there, no one's accessing it from that. So why is that? Why does it look like that? Why is it so open? Why is it so paved? So just some of the things that we've been thinking about, Mr. Chairman. I hope that kind of answered the question.
It does, and you actually segued nicely to the berm. So we're providing that sort of vegetation cover on the berm to sort of protect the neighborhood from seeing the building to some degree. Was there any discussion about continuing that or asking for continuing more vegetation along the fence of Flaherty School? Because obviously the kids in so that the fields are going to have an angle to sort of see that sort of front of that building. So was there any sort of discussion about adding further vegetation there?
A lot of discussion about that, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to speak for Zom or Simon, but my discussions with Attorney Marinelli includes revamping this area as well, substantially. There is no opposition whatsoever from the department or any discussions I've had about greenery at this location.
This is one that has sort of come up from various residents. This initially lost on a 3-2 vote. It has now passed on a 4-0 vote. Who were the two dissenters the first time around, if you remember? Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. No, there would have been three no's because it was 3-2. Who were the 3 no's the first time around? Do you remember?
I don't off the top of my head. I can get that information.
Could you
now.
just forward it over to me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. It's probably on the website.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think that's all I have for you, but I'll try not to call you back. I think the next couple will, I'll just call Attorney Marinelli up on the berm. I think it's the only question I have for you in terms of that. Yeah, you were nodding your head, so I assume, but just to put it on the record, there's no sort of opposition from you folks in terms of extending sort of some vegetation, whether it be you or the mall, along the Flaherty fence.
So it's off locus, but we would have to deal with and discuss that with Simon. But Jim wants to address it. On your question about the members, I think it was Mr. McCamey, Ms. Conley, and Mr. Grove.
Okay, thank you.
Frank is accurate. We need to talk to Simon about it. There isn't, a commitment per se, but we have studied it, and there is you just use my cursor. There is a significant tree line here. And there is not 100% of the length, but a strong percent of the length, a berm in there. Not terribly tall, but a bermed area with mature trees that you wouldn't want to change. But I had my landscape architect take a look at it, and his suggestion was, and this is kind of a representation on here of his idea, which is some evergreen low, because there's deciduous trees low that, in the wintertime you can see right through. I think there's actually a chain link fence there as well.
There is, yeah.
But we could definitely improve the low part already the upper part is mature and significant and a nice barrier, but all the way down, and then once you get down towards the circle, it kind of thins out. It could use more at the circle and low as it goes north. So we can definitely work with planning director and their staff on that.
We're happy to work with, ZOB in that process as it pertains to the mall land in that area.
Okay, thank you. You can actually probably stay. So I appreciate the mall coming tonight. I appreciate sort of the presentation you gave, some of the answers you've already given, because I think one of the biggest concerns I hear from folks is, in some ways, and respectfully with what I'm going to say, but ZOM is making this commitment to sort of improve this area of land. ZOM ultimately will be generating the permitting fees and will ultimately be generating the taxes. So the cash that we receive, the revenues that are going to come to the town, in essence, are at this point are coming from ZOM. The plaza is going to receive some sort of cash windfall for, in essence, selling the property to them and for their execution of this. So I think members of the town are concerned that there might not be a firm commitment from the plaza to, and it was touched on a little bit with Councilor Flaherty, to put a plan out there or to commit to some sort of plan going forward. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions. Maybe you can answer some of them, maybe you can't. It came up with Councilor Flaherty. It's something that's been on my mind a lot. I think one of the things that seems to hinder the mall and its future development is the lack of control you have in Lord and Taylor. And you started to touch on it in your previous statements, but what is the plan, or is there a plan to sort of execute some more control over that building? Because I'm not a design guy, but when you don't control that building, it doesn't give you a lot of options in terms of what you do over there.
Right, yeah, we don't control the building. That is one of the pieces of the property that's subject to a long-term lease. Would we like to get control of the building? Yes, we will have control over the building at some point in the future, but as I stated, that's subject to an existing lease in place, and so right now our options are somewhat limited.
What's the length of the lease remaining on that?
I don't recall the exact term, but it's well over 30 years.
30 years left.
Well over 30 years, yes, with extensions, yeah.
You mentioned that there were major tenants, obviously have some sort of control clause, which we expect in sort of a facility like this. Who are the major tenants that comprise that?
It depends on, different, they're not all the same, but generally speaking, it's the major tenants. So in this particular case, it would be Macy's, the owner of the Lord and Taylor building, Target, Nordstrom, those
So your anchor stores?
Correct, yeah.
What is, now, in sort of, again, sort of, I think, that planning piece, there sort of seems to be this commitment from ZOM and from the plaza to connect sort of the ZOM complex to the 99 building with a new tenant. But absent that, you then now have just an expanse of asphalt between you have ZOM looking pretty with its trees and set off, and this new location that's going to be a hot restaurant spot. What is the connection sort of ZOM to the rest of the mall? With a lot of these, and I don't disagree, live, play, eat is sort of the wave of the future, and the younger generation, there's less desire to own in some respects and more to live in these live, play, eats, and you can see it, Marina Bay, Southeast, some of those type of places. But the thing is, like, just looking at Marina Bay, those residences connect right into sort of the restaurants. They connect right into sort of, there's a yoga, looking at Marina Bay, there's a yoga studio, there's other things that they all blend together. Again, it's just sort of an expansive asphalt. So is there any sort of plan to create some sort of a pathway or some other way to connect those who live at ZOM with the rest of the mall? Because otherwise it's just sort of it's its own little oasis plopped there and it has no connection to you guys.
Sure. There are some connections in place by ways of walkways, and I think part of this plan, and it may not be specifically highlighted, but is to accentuate and improve those walkways that connect the residences at South Shore to South Shore Plaza. So to improve and enhance some of the pedestrian connections. That would be part of the overall plan.
Your counterpart in his presentation, he said obviously that malls are going to win or lose, they're going to fail. How are you going to ensure that South Shore Plaza is one of the winners? Like what kind of commitment do you have in terms of development? There was sort of a lot of 10,000-foot ideas that were put out during that presentation of things that other malls and other regions are doing, but there wasn't really sort of a commitment from you folks on what the next steps look like.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons that malls fail, and I think Clay hinted on some of those in his remarks. You know, many of those positive attributes that we have here, namely the location, the fact that we own the property in its entirety, there is no debt on the property, those are contributing factors to making sure that the property remains successful. You know, we think that this project, the residences at South Shore, is a catalyst for future development, and you know, I don't know exactly how that is going to play out. I can tell you that, you know, for us, the first part of that project is the redevelopment of the 99 building. Like I said, we have a great tenant. The next steps and the next steps beyond that, frankly, are unknown at this point. We have some ideas, but they're quite speculative in nature. And you know, I think that, you know, the example that we used of Southdale Center is applicable. It's not going to be, it's not formulaic. This doesn't happen exactly the same way at every property. And I think, you know, if you rewound to 2014, you know, my colleagues that were working on that particular project probably wouldn't have predicted that, you know, that property would look the way it does today. I expect that, you know, there will be maybe some other different uses in the future. Maybe it's a fitness use. You know, the residential use is symbiotic with retail. We have already a grocery use. I think that we'll see more of the restaurant users, you know, proximate to the development. So specifically, it's hard to say, you know, this is, I can tell you what step one is, that's what we're talking about. I told you what I think step two is. The next steps are a bit unknown at this point. But you know, we've owned the property for 25 years, and we plan to own this property into the future and to continue to invest in it.
I had a captive audience in my car because I have a daughter who's 15, and her friends are 15 and 16, and obviously would be the general mall attendees. But yet I never drive a mile down the road to the mall. I'm always driving to Legacy or to Derby Street or to Newbury. So I asked in this captive audience, you know, why don't we go here? And the 15, 16-year-old answers were, it's old. It doesn't have the stores we shop in. It sucks. So how are you, or what is the process for not only the outside of the mall, but if we're going to be trying to add residences and bring things in, what are we doing to attract the type of stores that the 15, 16-year-old kids are going to shop in? And so I asked them when they said it doesn't have the stores we shop in, you know, what do you guys want to see? And obviously, Vuori, Altered State, Carhartt, Atleta, Cava, Nike, Vineyard Vines, Whole Foods, Dick's, Shake Shack. What is the plan to try to attract? They're very expensive, kids, Melissa. What is the plan to sort of attract the kids to the mall, or to get these type of stores open? Because, you know, when you do look around the mall, it is, with the exception, I would say, respectfully, of when I hit Nordstrom's, Target, Macy's, Milton's, I sort of skip the rest. There's not a Starbucks anymore, there's not a Dunks anymore. So what is the plan to get better shops in there?
Sure. I apologize. I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. My leasing colleagues, that's kind of their focus. I mean, I can tell you that it's a very competitive market, in particular in this part of the country. I would say more than any part of the country. You know, the competition for, you know, some of the tenants that you mentioned is extreme, and you know, I'm not sure what goes into the decision making that, you know, some of those tenants make, but we think that this is a good product. The transformation of the property, it happens on a daily basis. So there's turnover of leases, turnover of tenants. That's kind of the nature of the beast. We have a slide that is quite popular among our leadership that shows kind of major tenants at different courses through the history of the company. And if you take kind of 10-year increments, you get different tenants every single 10 years. It's constantly evolving. That takes a lot of work. I know that our leasing colleagues are doing tremendous work. It's ongoing. I wish I could tell you, what the special sauce is. It's a bit outside of my area of expertise. I'm focused on the development. I do think that incorporating new uses, specifically residential, it unlocks, I think, the new potential. You have people that are there 24 hours a day that they can interact with the property in new and different ways and create the demand and interest, both kind of locally, but also from some of those national tenants that see that, there are positive changes in place.
And I think you said it twice in there. The leases, obviously, it seems to me that those longer term leases, which gave you probably a safety net to some degree, knowing that you had that, those will also hinder you in sort of future development. Besides the Lord and Taylor building, with its 30 plus, what are the other sort of longer term leases?
It's the major anchors that I
All the
mentioned
other
before,
major
yeah.
leases. Would that include Target too in the new
Correct,
new
yes.
spot?
Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing further. Anything further from members of the council? Seeing none, we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow night, which will be public comment. So folks will be allowed to come in. There will be a sign-in sheet available, and folks will be able to sort of speak to their thoughts, concerns, and feelings about this project. It will be starting here, 7 o'clock tomorrow night. I know at least someone had emailed me asking about attendance at it, if they were going to attend tomorrow, if they're going to attend the full council. So I'll just sort of rehash what I said earlier. This board is a subcommittee of the full council. We will make a recommendation to the full council, but ultimately it is just a recommendation. The full council will make the final decision. So for those residents who sort of might have scheduling issues, if you're only going to attend one and offer your comment, I think the actual full council meeting would probably be the best bet for best bang for your buck. But obviously we will welcome anyone who wants to come and comment tomorrow night. So thank you to the presenters tonight, the mall, Attorney Marinelli, Mr. Dunlop, Ms. Rozzi, we appreciate you being here at this sort of later hour. Do I have a motion to table this until tomorrow night?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Hume. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second for Councilor Flaherty. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah. I have a motion to adjourn from Councilor Hume. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Councilor Flaherty. All those in favor?
Aye.